Hey, Oak Life, welcome to our State of the Roots and Branches meeting. The first section of our meeting didn't get recorded, and so I'm going to redo the introduction and then cut in when it did start recording. So um, if you weren't able to join us yesterday, we had a bunch of people on our call, or when we had this meeting, we had a bunch of people on the call, and it was great. It was a really nice way to kind of check in and see where the church is and hear from different folks and answer some questions. So thank you for watching this. Thank you for leaning into community. Thank you for caring about our community. First, I just want to celebrate the ways our community has stayed together and the ways our community has really not just persevered, but overcome so many challenges in this time. The image of our church has always been kind of an oak tree, and I like that image because it has roots and has branches. It goes deep and it goes out, but also there are seasons to it. Like there are winters where the leaves fall and it doesn't seem like there's as much life, and then there are other seasons where it's in full force, and that's kind of how life works. And we are in a specific season, but this season will pass and there'll be a new season. And in this time, I've seen so many ways that people have reflected God's love, have chosen faith and compassion and justice over fear and anxiety, and have stayed together. So I'd like to read a passage of scripture as an anchor image of who we are and what we're trying to be, and it's Acts 2. As the early church is forming in the midst of their particular uncertainty, we read, "They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who are being saved." I love this image because it's this moment. If you think about the early church, everything was up in the air. Everything was disrupted, right? The leader that they thought would lead this revolution or do something is gone, and they start to gather together and figure out what it looks like for them to be together. And they would break bread. They would share food, which we started that communion project today. We'll be breaking bread every week together, even apart. And though they could meet in temple courts and various things, we're meeting online, and we've been consistently able to not let the separation of shelter in place, the quarantine, define our community. Our community has been defined over and over again by a commitment to lean into one another, to be there for one another, and to reflect this exact image of giving our stuff for others, of breaking bread, of gathering consistently. So a couple updates. First, we will be we're kind of preparing and planning to do online church for the rest of the year and into 2020, maybe mid 2021. Following CDC guidelines, following local guidelines, also looking at what other churches are doing, we're noticing that this thing isn't going away, and we are and will be committed to safety of our community, especially those who are most vulnerable around us. And so that means a church gathering isn't the safest thing to do of a large group. It could spread the virus. And so we're kind of committed to being online, finding some patterns and some rhythms that are sustainable throughout the next season. And we will adjust as we need to. But we're planning for at least probably till next summer. And with that, we'll be doing it on YouTube for Sunday services, and then building out different community spaces throughout the week. Lots of community-led things within the church. Basically, every platform we have, we'll find ways to engage and do things online. And for us, we experimented with a couple different platforms, but YouTube is the most stable and sustainable and secure way for us to have a touch point, a Sunday worship service, and be able to chat and be live watching it together. Security is of the utmost importance for us as a church. And with that, we want to update you with the Zoom incident. And if you were a part of our church when we were Zoom bombed, it was a very difficult experience for our church. And I'm so grateful for the outpouring of goodness, of solidarity, of healing, of resources that came afterwards, which drastically outnumbered the actual challenge at that moment. So many people were helping one another, and we had, I think, around 40 people go through like counseling groups and various things. As we engaged with the ramifications of that event, we learned that hundreds, if not thousands, of other groups around the country have experienced similar things, that Zoom is not a secure platform. And so we saw that another church in San Francisco joined a class action lawsuit, and we felt like we talked about if this is something we wanted to join as well, and ultimately we felt like God was leading us to join it, because we felt like we wanted to hold Zoom accountable and raise awareness of this issue, but also reflect our own values of justice, of speaking out for the vulnerable. And so we're currently in a discovery period with this lawsuit as a plaintiff on this class action lawsuit. If you know anything about lawsuits, it could go a while. It's not a ton of work for us, and all it means is at some point they will ask us for what happened to us, which we've kind of already been in dialogue with them, and we're committed to the if there is some sort of settlement as a result of this, 100% of those proceeds would go towards causes related to the Zoom bombing incident. If you have any questions on that, please let us know. I'm really proud of our leadership team in so many ways, but that's one of the ways I'm really proud of them for stepping into a moment of being able to act justly in our world. Finally, before I pass it off to Leslie, if you want to support our hosts, the New Parkway, we're still committed to them as our friends, and we want to meet back there in person when we can, when it's safe again. They are also going through all this as a theater. They host gatherings, and so they are planning to be shut down for at least a while, probably on the similar timeline as us. But they do have a revenue stream coming in, so if you'd like to support our hosts, pick up a meal box from them. And we love them, and we hope the best for them in this season as well. So now we're going to transition to generosity. And Leslie, who is our board chair, will be leading this. And you'll hear from different people on the leadership team meeting. If you weren't in on, or from the leadership team, if you weren't in on the original meeting, Charlotte also invited us in the beginning of our gathering to pray and sign amen, and also led us in prayer. So thank you for all that stuff.
In addition, for I'll kind of give you an overview of what we did for the 1920 budget and how our funds were spent. So the staffing expenses include our 2 pastors' salary. We also had an intern and a children's ministry director. The intern and the children's ministry director were 2 new positions for the fiscal year. We also had more ministry expenses such as supplies and outreach. We do things like newcomers desserts, We had guest speakers and some general ministry expenses. A larger portion in addition to the salaries was rent. So we had 2 new Parkway theaters on Sunday. We also had some activities at Chapter 510. In the admin section, these are things like software and insurances. And when we talk about outreach is such things as Pride and Project Peace. And then we always have a section for fees. So we do digital giving. So you go online to give, and that has it's called a fee, like a ZipZap fee. So things like that are all in the fee section or other section. And as I mentioned, our giving was very healthy for the fiscal year 1920. And then as we move into the fiscal year 2021, we, as a leadership team, voted on a budget that we are hoping to adhere to. So this is a projected and anticipated budget for fiscal year 2021. But as you know, things changed. We actually voted on this budget, I think, about 3 times as things changed, as the new Parkway, whether or not we were able to go back, whether or not we're anticipating going back into 2021. So things do change. In addition to giving, we also applied for the payroll protection program and received a loan in the amount of $23,000. So I wanted to add that into also what our anticipated giving and total projected expenses are going to be. So what's changing from 1920 to 2021? We're still keeping our pastors on salary, so that's good. And we'll still have a children's ministry director. We're anticipating doing virtual children's ministry activities while we are in this virtual space to keep the children and the youth engaged with us. And we're looking into having a new IT resource that can be dedicated to help us in this new digital space. We still have ministry expenses, things like having guest speakers or any type of general ministry expenses, such as if we decide to do something virtual or any type of volunteer appreciation, because everything, we're still trying to keep as much as possible, all the things that make Oak Life what Oak Life is. And then in terms of rent, we reduced the rent from 1920 as we won't have the new parkway, but we still maintain our church office. And we're thinking that maybe in 2021, we will go back to the new parkway. So we have a budget line item for rent. We still have to maintain our software and insurances, and that's kind of what's in the admin space. And then we have a larger portion towards our outreach and our generosity and our giving. Max is going to present on our giving in about 2 slides, so I'll leave it to there. But we did vote on increasing our generosity into the community in this time. So as you can see, the total projected expenses, even from 1920 to 2021, has increased by $20,000. We do believe that we can meet this budget. At first, when we even voted on the 1920 budget, we weren't sure about the $172,000. However, we met and exceeded that, and we thank you for all of your generous giving. And we're hoping that you partner with us for fiscal year 2021, and you'll see that if anything changes, we're also willing to vote and update our budget. I wanted to talk a little bit about our Emergency Benevolence Fund. The Emergency Benevolence Fund is separate from our operating budget. The Emergency Benevolence Fund has been funded 100% by generous donations from the community, and we thank you for that. With the Benevolence Fund, we were able to provide support to for anyone who has been affected by COVID. We were able to provide support to Myanmar. We were able to provide support for utilities for individuals. We were able to provide support for counseling for individuals or healthcare expenses, and it's all because of generous giving. The purpose of the Emergency Benevolence Fund is to help people that are in need. And we are continuing to have that fund available. And if anyone has any need for that, you just can simply email benevolence@oaklifechurch.com. There is a process that we go through, so we may ask you to fill out a form, which is completely 100% confidential. And we try to give donations directly to the provider, so whether it's rent or utilities, etc. If you have any questions, you can just email benevolence@oaklifechurch.com. Or if you'd like to give, you can visit oaklifechurch.com/generosity to donate. So now Max is going to talk about our new outreach, our new mission giving.
Good morning, Oak Life. The leadership team has decided that generosity, which is so much a part of the fabric of our values and who we are as a church family, should be expressed not only in the many ways that we give time and of the smarts that we have, but also in the budget that we have. And the idea here is that that we give beyond what we control in outreach to other groups, other Christian communities and community groups that we care about. We do this already with Third Sunday Giving, and that'll be a large part of what we want to do with our generosity, to bring that value added, in a sense, money added, to the offerings that we'll take. So we'll continue to take Third Sunday offerings for community groups that are working mostly in Oakland, in the Bay Area. But now we'll add an extra punch out of the general budget to that, so that there'll be a much bigger piece of help that we can afford. A word about 10%, which is typically a biblical word, tithe. The tithe idea in the Bible is to try and make real generosity. Generosity is kind of thing. One person's generosity might be another person's miserliness, and to make it real in the Old Testament, the tithe came about. It was 10%, which was always understood as a floor, not a ceiling. It's not, oh, we give 10% and that's great. It's 10%. Well, that obviously is something just about everybody can do. So the 10% tithe, which again in the New Testament, Jesus' teaching is always, hey, we go beyond the law. It's not something that we aspire to with the tithe. It's like, this is a bare minimum. And in our budget, we're starting off with 10%. It's my personal hope that we may be able to expand that percentage in future years as God blesses us with God's generosity, which is where it all starts. So structure-wise, two things that we're doing out of the new 10% generosity section of our outreach. One is that the dream of being able to help another church start is something that we want to make real. And we haven't, as a leadership team or as a church, figured out what that will be, but we want to say, hey, let's earmark $5,000 in our coming budget to a new church start, either one that's just beginning or one that's in the first few years, but needing a little bit of extra help. So it's a lateral kind of movement from one church start to another of help. After that $5,000, we'll divide the remainder of our generosity tithe into 12 equal parts. And those will be that extra money, the value added, the money added to what we're able to bring out of our third Sunday offering. So that's the very brief idea and a little bit of structure that we have to it for the 2021 budget. Obviously, many questions could be asked. Feel free to put those in chat and we'll get to them later. So thank you.
And just one thing to add on to that. Thank you, Max. So for folks, for some context, like an average third Sunday for us in the past, as we would collect money and give it to an organization, could be like $300 on the high end, close to $1,000, but usually somewhere around $300. And now, like today, we are giving to Abundant Beginnings, and just that starting point is $1,020. So it's a big increase in how much we can give out to the community. So and I also want to applaud our leadership team for voting to do this in the midst of kind of an uncertain time to up our giving and generosity. It's pretty cool. And is this me? Oh, this is Greg, right?
Yep, it's Greg.
Now we're going to give the floor to Greg.
All right, now that I got it off mute. All right, community spaces, thank you for that. We have been working on ways to keep the community engaged. This is a beautiful slide. Oh my gosh, this is so nice. So yes, today was the first day we're starting the communion project. Shout out to anyone who's been making bread. Let's see, we got a couple lists here. As you're looking at this, I'm kind of going to go through what the week looks like thus far. So a typical week, a couple of different points of engagement. So obviously Sunday, we have the coffee hour, followed by Sunday service, a group that I wanted to start to kind of temp check whether or not it would be a sustainable group or if it was going to be a kind of a one-time thing. As a Black Oak Lifers group, we kind of had a check-in in the peak of the racial disparity and tension, and we had a space, and from that space we decided, all right, let's just have a group for the individuals who identify as Black in Oak Life to share. It's been agreed upon that will be a continuing group, so we do that bi-weekly. We're going to talk a little bit more about life groups in just a second, but that happens on Sundays. So Sundays we have 3 different points to engage. On Mondays, we have the newsletter come out, and Chris and I record and post our Roots and Branches on YouTube. Tuesday's pretty open. Wednesday, we have the Facebook noon prayer. We have the IG devotional at 9 on Instagram. Andy has initiated a parents group hangout that will be weekly on Wednesdays, as well as a kids group that will fluctuate in regards to its rhythm, Thursdays, a bulk of our life groups are happening. We have sustaining from the previous, the surviving life group, pre-COVID, going strong, the LGBTQ plus group. So many good things are coming out of that group. So shout out to all those involved. Charlotte's going to be starting a Bible study. There's also a group that's been going on. Mitzi and Stephanie have a group that's going on that could be continuing as we go forward. Fridays, trying to engage another area on Instagram, a kind of a get to know section where we do a little bit of interviewing as to different individuals who are in the community. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. It's very foundational. We're trying to implement as many different, I call them touch points or engagement strategies to just keep people as engaged as possible, which goes to the life groups. So far, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 life groups thus far. A question could be, all right, well, where would I find these life groups? The 2 locations where life groups lived, as far as virtually, would be on our website. And then there was a Google Doc or a Google form in which people could sign up, and there was a list of kind of the descriptions. So very, very recently, I sent out an email to kind of get just a summary of what each group is, in hopes to also get a video clip of what each group is about so people can have that face-to-face connection. That's the one thing that we've lacked the most in our life group initiative, is having a place where people can see the person and hear what the group is about. So that will be collected, recorded, and live on Instagram, not Instagram, on YouTube in a playlist, so people can kind of just skim through and see what life groups are about and which ones they want to sign up for and whatnot. So all of that is in the works. It's kind of idea transitioning into action phase. So in the very, very near future, in the next week or so, we should see some movement, not movement, but we should see that actually up on our webpage and on the Google form. Yep.
And you can, in the weekly newsletter, the life group link will be there as well.
I also wanted to highlight that there's kind of 2 pieces here. The first piece is stuff that, our pastors are taking the lead on, the leadership team is taking the lead on. These are reoccurring spaces that we're doing as a church. And then the second part is really spaces that the community has brought forward that they'd like to do. These are spaces that they're continuing to present as and take leadership over. And then as Oak Life Church, we're just helping to support that. So if you have any ideas of either if you'd like to start a life group or a connection group or anything like that, please let the leadership team know. You can just email leadership@oaklifechurch.com, and then we'll try to help and support that.
Hey, Oak Life, Donna Jonke here, and I'm going to just add a little bit more about the continuing community. The leadership team has been doing some brainstorming on some other ideas to engage our community, particularly important during this time where we're trying to stay separate but together. So a couple of ideas that we've tossed around is a virtual camp out, which is going to take some imagination, but it might be a lot of fun. And also looking at some special worship nights. But this is where you come in as a community. If you have any ideas, want to brainstorm with us, we welcome those. And you can use the Q&A time at the end of our presentation to present your ideas, or you can email leadershipteam@oaklifechurch.com.
Hey Oak Life, it's Stephanie. I'm going to share a little bit more about some of the things that we've been doing with our branches. And first and foremost, I wanted to just mention that we as a leadership team have really been holding the unique and diverse needs that have been coming up during these uncertain times. As Leslie mentioned, the Emergency Benevolence Fund that really sparked from our hope that we can hold folks who are struggling through this COVID pandemic. Another piece of that is we as a leadership team have been really thinking about and been thoughtful about the ways in which we can support the Black Lives Matter movement, and really thinking about how, as we as a church, can think about standing alongside folks who are resisting racism and oppression. And so part of that has stemmed from us thinking about what are ways that we can be intentional that are also long lasting and not just a short term quick nod to Black lives. And one of those things that we're going to be doing is creating a racial advisory panel. And the purpose of this panel is to invite folks in the community who have been doing racial justice work or have been thinking about racial justice issues to specifically sit together and provide support and insight to the leadership team on the decisions that we're making to really honor and value our racial diversity and specifically Black lives and in our church and our congregation and the ways in which we interact. So that is in the process of being developed. We have some nominations, and hopefully within this next month, we'll be reaching out to folks, those of you, again, potentially in this call or in our community, about your support and your participation in this panel to help us be more thoughtful and intentional in our work at dismantling racism. As we're continuing to go through this pandemic, our church is also being supportive of providing those folks who don't have access to masks with masks. And so we've had a contingency of our community who have been actually making masks. We received a generous donation from Andrew Chang's father for a bunch of masks, and we have over 2,500 masks that we were able to donate to our local community and those who are in need specifically of having ways to protect themselves from the pandemic. The last area of branches that I'm going to mention is Oakland Pride. So this year, Oakland Pride is actually going to be virtual and going to be conducted over a week-long celebration. And so the Pride Planning Committee has been reaching out to different folks in our Oak Life community to put on specific content to support, really, I think we're envisioning our Pride event situation being, how do we support and integrate our diverse sexual identity with our religious identity as Christians as well. And so we've got a whole stream of different content, from moms reading inclusive children's books to question and answer panels to special sermons, talks given by some of our own dear community members. And so really excited for the different parts and pieces of the Pride Planning Committee that we're going to be putting out. So look for that in September. We're going to send out an agenda and links, and we're hoping that we get a lot of Oak Life folks taking part in celebrating Pride with us this year.
Stephanie, let me just thank you for that. Let me just add a footnote on the mask project. This came out of the Justice Community team of the church, and it involves getting those masks specifically to the different unhoused community groups and some of the camps in Oakland. But that's just a little more specific information.
Is this me?
Yes.
Cool, thank you. I can't see the agenda with the slides up, but man, that's a lot of amazing stuff. I'm deeply proud of the ways this community is stuck together and continued. Like, we didn't circle the wagons and hunker down. We're like actively involved in movements of justice, asking tough questions, like finding ways to extend love out into the world, including people in our church. So thank you to everyone on the leadership team. Man, so much hard work you guys have put into it. Thank you for everyone in the church who's been a part of this. So now we'd like to open up for any questions or comments. And because I'm doing the screen thing, Leslie, it might be better for you to do this because I can't really see if people are commenting. Or do we want to take the slides off for now so people can see their faces?
Yes, I think we can take the slides off for now. We haven't seen any questions in the chat, but we also want to make sure that not everyone goes off on mute, unmuted at a time. So if you could just raise your hand in the chat if you have a question that you'd like to ask us. Okay, Maeva, you want to go first? Just unmute yourself.
Good morning, everyone. Hi, can you all see me? I got a new hairdo. Anyway, it's so good to see all of you right now. I'm really excited. It's been a while. Um, I wanted to say thank you to for the presentation and seeing what the church is doing as a whole and the different things that they're doing as far as with the branches and when it comes to racial justice. And the comment I wanted to make on that, like I like the idea of having a panel, but something that I'm also trying to get my job to do is really not just focusing on um, um, racial justice, but racial equity, coming into the work, having a racial equity mindset, using a racial equity framework where we're looking at every area of our lives and seeing where are the gaps and how can we fill in those gaps to make sure that everybody belongs. And so just thinking about as we continue to think about what we're going to be doing, if there's a way that we can think about having a racial equity framework when we look at how we do life groups, how we do childcare, how we do our missions, how we, just like in everything that we do we have an equity mindset? Um, yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, Mava, I really like that way of thinking about it. And if you have particular articles or books that focus on sort of mastering that framework, I'd be really interested to see them. But thanks for offering that suggestion.
I'll just jump in and add. I think that is like the hope of the panel is that it won't be just like a quick fix, right? I think this is a systemic problem that the church has also been complicit in, and so I think that we want us to start thinking about how do we think about equity across the different facets of what it means to be part of Oak Life and part of our community. So I really appreciate that naming, Maeva, and I hope that that's going to be kind of the mission of this panel to really help us make visible things that are invisible currently, so we can actually address it and make changes.
And in addition to that, we also will continue to communicate out to the community about the things that we're doing. So we will communicate them either in the weekly newsletter that Chris sends out, or if it's long enough, we send out just a direct communication about that piece, and having that information available on Oak Life's website so that you can see what we're doing and how we're doing it. And as we continue to grow and build, and for you to partner along with us and communicate back to us. So always we're open to communication and understanding the things that we're just trying in effort to build a more equitable and diverse community, and also to have that be a more equitable and diverse Bay Area. So we just appreciate, just as we're kind of moving along with this, that you move with us too. I haven't seen anyone else in the chat, but does anyone else want to put in there that they'd like to communicate or go off on mute, or any questions about anything that we've presented thus far?
I have one quick story in case anybody else adds anything. On the slides for Benevolence Fund, there was a map of Myanmar you may have noticed, just to highlight. We have a connection to a church there that was affected by COVID stuff and lost a bunch of money and needed to finish their roof. And we were within like a few days able to get them $2,000 to help that project. And I've been a part of lots of churches where needs come up and it gets bogged down in bureaucracy, or it just doesn't meet the focus. But I've been seeing so much that there isn't an attitude of scarcity in our community. There's an attitude of like, let's do all we can and love as best we can. And that's one example. So just a cool thing.
I will say, since we have 2 Emergency Benevolence Fund members, it is a smaller team from the entire leadership team. And we know that it's a time of pandemic. So we make an effort that once we receive a request, we try to vote on it within 48 hours. And it has been within 24 hours that we at least see the email and try to get enough information that we can respond back with, okay, here's the next step. And we also don't want it to just be a one-sided. So we will continue to support with other resources. We have another member on the team who's gathering resources from the Bay Area government sites on how do you advocate for yourself? How do you do this? Here's some templates to write if you need either rent support or utility support. And even those are trying to partner with other different organizations and having that information available, because we want to make sure that people feel empowered. When you already have a loss, it can feel very disempowering. And so we want to continue to empower and also provide support that we can. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. And Chris, I'm not sure if there's any questions that have come up from the Google form that we sent out.
I'll read the one question we got. How can we use this new digital platform to become a megachurch? And I'm pretty sure that question was asked as a joke, but I will say I have not heard our leadership team talk about that, so we'll add it to our discussions.
Oh, I actually have a question for the community. So my question is, what types of digital community building do you really wish Oak Life was doing? Like, what are you sort of craving or longing for? Because I want to be a small group leader in the fall, and I want to know what's working and what's not working for you in terms of digital community.
I can chime in. I want to say and commend Eric for doing a phenomenal job with the LGBTQ plus small group. It's one of my biggest touch points all week in terms of feeling a sense of community and belonging. So if Eric wants to share any tips, I think one of the things that we do that I love is we've done like playlists where we try to guess whose song it is. So we'll have themes like 90s slow jams, or that's what we did last week, was 90s R&B. And it was just good to get to know each other, like, because we try to guess the song and then they would explain like why they chose that song. And then the other fun thing that we do are online games. Like, we've been playing Codenames, which is a super freaking fun game. So anyway, just wanted to throw those ideas out there. Like, Eric, if you want to chime in, or anybody else in the LGBT group, or any other group for that matter, yeah, I'll shut up there. Thanks, Eric.
Hi. A couple things. One is like recognizing like that you can't do it alone. So with our group, there's a lot of participation from a lot of people, and like I think as someone who really likes to be in control of like a vision, I think it's kind of a balance between like holding true to that vision, but allowing other people to participate in that vision. So I think big picture, that's the thing that has affected me and the most, and actually like made me like wonder in the marvel of community. The other thing is like, I think balance, because I tend to be fairly serious as a person. I don't know, maybe not. But sometimes we have too much of like one thing, and I just realized that like, games is not a bad thing, and creative activities are good, and Bible studies are good, but like just having like a variety of things helps with like just people getting to know each other, because I think if there is like one goal, it's definitely getting people to know each other, because that helps the conversation. And in terms of equitability, I think the one, like, if there's one thing that I think about going into a meeting, it's like, how can we create a space that everybody talks like at least once? You know, if that happens, then you kind of realize that everyone, you know, feels like they contributed today, and like and that's so important, you know. So like, step up, step back. Like, if you talk a lot, you know, encourage those folks to listen. And if you don't talk a lot, like, try to provide a space that everyone feels like they can talk, you know. That's really pretty much it.
Thank you. So I see Mava commenting in the chat about trying to find the right life group fit. And so I feel like it is more challenging during COVID to find a fit because there's not as much reading that in-person energy. So does anybody, you know, have any thoughts to share about how they're looking for a life group, or how what would make it easier for them to find a good life group?
This is Leslie. I'd like to add also, this is why I have kind of asked Greg to maybe put together these videos and have a playlist on YouTube, because I don't think that if you just read a description online, you get to really hear the heart and feel about these life groups. You don't get to hear what they're doing or meet the people, or even feel comfortable to say, hey, that's a familiar face, and maybe potentially that might be a good start for me. So that's what I'm hoping that the videos accomplish, is to give people an overview of what the life group is, as well as to help you feel engaged with the people that attend and what their vibe is. I didn't even know that the LGBTQ group does games. I love games anyway. So I think that I hope that that helps in building the community. And I think that that's a very honest and valid point, that at this time when you're just signing up online, you don't get a chance to actually engage with the life group leader aside from email, and then you don't get to have the feel. And our idea is that we really want people to be connected in community at this time and not to feel isolated.
I'll add one thing for me on this. I've really been, I miss getting coffee with people. Like, probably one of my favorite things of doing church work is to get to hear people's stories and build relationships, and can't do that right now. And so I've been using Marco Polo, or like setting up calls with people. But there's a handful of folks that I'm in active conversations digitally, but it's been rough. But I also want to say that I've found connection through different ways. It's not the same, but it's still connection. And also put it out there, if anybody does want to get on Marco Polo with me and just chat about life, it's a good app because you can have long form thoughts and respond as needed. And as a new parent with no childcare and all this, it's a good app for me and where I'm at.
I also wanted to say thank you to Rachel about making some Parmesan rosemary bread, considering that's part of the communion project, is the making of the bread and breaking bread with people and offering bread to people. So if you live in Lake Merritt, you can hit her up about that. I want bread, but I'm not in California right now, but it sounds delicious. So I think we're kind of coming to a close here, and I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who attended our discernment meeting today. This was our first discernment meeting that was virtual, and we weren't exactly sure. Yeah, yay to everyone. We weren't exactly sure how this was going to go, and especially to have everyone on a video chat. And so there was a lot of good work that was put into it from all the presenters, from putting the slides together, from joining even a group that had to help us come up with what the agenda topics were. And as a leadership team, we're very open about what we're doing and how we're we're participating in the community and what ideas we're trying to go forward and what we're trying to support. So if there's any other questions or anything, please feel free to email the leadership team at oaklifechurch.com, and maybe Chris and Greg will cover it during one of their Roots and Branches conversations and have it on YouTube, or we can just email you back, because your question may not be just you alone. It may be from the entire community. So we thank you for this time and was hoping maybe someone can close us out in prayer. You could do it, Charlotte. Thank you.
All right, so please, beautiful God, take care of this community. Help everyone feel convicted of their inner worth and precious value to God at every single moment of the day, and help us be part of one another's lives in meaningful ways. Help every single person feel a sense of belonging, and also have courage to reach out during times they feel maybe a little bit droopy or unenergetic, but that they should be able to reach out and get the type of social energy that fills them up, keep our hearts loving, and keep drawing us closer to you, God. Protect and guard us and all our loved ones. Amen.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great Sunday.
Thank you all. Love you all. Eric, I'll watch the A's Giants with you.